That's what we put forward.
All right. Here we are again. We're going to go ahead and continue our work session that we started earlier tonight. We have one more item on the agenda, and that's going through the League of Oregon Cities legislative agenda. For those that don't know and the public that's watching, League of Oregon Cities is an incredible group that lobbies Salem on behalf of issues that are important to cities and important to our communities. They do a great job. They also do a lot of education for cities and have a lot of great resources for cities, especially smaller cities that can't afford to have huge staff to deal with some of the land use challenges that we have in those types of things. So every year they have a group of policy committees that meet. And those policies committees come up with legislative priorities. The board of directors of the league approve a slate, and then that slate goes out to all the cities for cities to vote on in terms of where we would like to see the league focus their efforts. And that's what we're here to do tonight. Did I get that right, Craig?
Yeah, so we can, you mentioned all that.
And can I add something real quick?
Yeah.
And just because of the 5 we choose, doesn't mean LOC is not going to talk about any of it. They're still gonna advocate for a bunch more of these, even if the 5 we choose aren't, they're gonna advocate for a lot of these still.
Yeah, so every city's gonna submit 5,
Yeah.
so.
And because we don't know exactly what's going to come up in the long session, it's not unusual to have bills that are preempting city control drop in the middle of the session. There's a legislative committee made up of board members and the chairs of all the policy committees. I sit on that committee that take up any issues and decide whether the league needs to jump in or not. So they're watching our back quite a bit. Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
No, you nailed it on the first couple slides, so we can just actually move to this one now. And this is the stuff I'd sent out a few weeks in the Council Connect, just so you guys could start looking at it. So we need to come up with 5 of the top priorities for Sherwood, and we can only have one survey submitted. So we'll go back and submit that survey. It's due at the end of the month. So that's what we're hoping to narrow this down to.
I think the most efficient way to do this would be.
I have a question about it too that I thought were very close. And I wasn't sure between the digital equity and inclusion and the broadband. The resilient future-proof broadband infrastructure and planning investment. I mean, essentially, if you were to say, I want everybody in Oregon or in Sherwood to have broadband, which one of those am I going for?
So you're talking,
There's resilient future-proof broadband that's down on the side there.
right.
And then there's digital equity and inclusion that talks about for, rural and, less advantaged and, you know what I mean? Like, and so I feel like either those should be smashed together as one thing, broadband for everybody, or I'm not understanding what the difference is.
So, I'm the chair of that committee. So in the context of, we have a lot of money coming into the state for broadband infrastructure investment. Between BDP and BEAD, and there's a digital equity piece too. It's almost $1 billion. So that particular one is more around making sure that we're spending it wisely, right? So it gets more into feeds and speeds and future proofing. Like, let's not roll out ESL to a community and say that's great, right?
Yeah.
That's my understanding of it. The DEI is more about education, if I remember correctly.
DEI.
Digital equity.
Yeah, the DEI.
It says the LOC supports legislative policies that help all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, blah, blah, blah.
So think of that as having.
It's got our affordable connectivity program, the ACP, which is the one that.
So think about that in a couple ways. ACP program was one that the federal government did to subsidize your internet connection, getting it into the house. The other thing we're advocating for that is education. Like once you have it in the house, you need 2 other things. You need a device be able to use it and you get education on how to use it. And it really, my understanding is that's that's the area that really focuses.
Okay,
It's,
okay.
in the LOC document itself, it gives a
Yeah.
little bit of background. Did you read that part?
I did, but again, it feels, again, this, at the most, if I'm being most generous, it feels like two sides of the same coin. I'm not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Strange that they're divided.
Yeah, we can't combine it. It's just,
I know,
Yeah.
so that's why, but that's what, like, I was like, well, I want the money to be wisely spent on broadband for everyone in Oregon. Which one of those do I vote for? That was my question essentially.
Digital equity inclusion, so that would offer affordable options then,
That's what I would.
and it would cover more of the Oregon.
But does that cover the infrastructure stuff that we were just talking about, okay, well, how do we?
and to Kim's earlier point, we're gonna be all over that. anyways.
Okay. So
So,
not vote for it just because we're gonna be all over it, okay. All right,
in fact, there's to that end, I'm actually chairing a statewide committee that Representative Marsh asked me to do. And we're trying to figure out how to pay for a replacement to ACP because the federal government failed
Yeah.
to fund that. So there's and League of Oregon Cities is heavily involved in that effort. So those things are going to continue. anyways.
Wondering if the efficient way is to just go through and say, and take basically a poll, like, who's infrastructure funding, oh, two less, 1, 2. Like we would.
That's probably the best way to do it.
So should we just go, each person give their top five and go around the room?
Yeah.
Want me to go first? Sure. Sure. Infrastructure funding. Mine are all about getting money. The 2025 transportation package is really important, because, one of the gas tax dollars are split on a formula. A certain amount goes to cities, certain amount goes to, counties and the state, et cetera. There's been talks in Salem about changing that formula and we are dead set against that. City, we need to get our money. So that's,
how does that one play with the road user fee one? Because that was saying, hey, replace the gas.
so let me vote and I'll,
Okay.
yeah, so I just let me get on, then I'll answer your question. So the transportation package is important. The resilient, I'm sorry, where is it?
Investment in community resiliency,
Resilient, future-proof broadband.
broadband.
I'm actually not voting for the broadband ones at all.
Employment plan readiness.
That was it. Employment, land readiness, which is about resources for cities to get land to be ready to develop, shovel ready. And then there's also a similar one. What do I got, Craig? 4, 3?
You got 3.
The next one is going to be the one you just mentioned, which is an alternative to our gas tax.
Shift from gas tax to road use.
Road use tax. Gas tax revenues are declining. We have a lot more electric cars on the street. And one of the reasons this is important to me is Salem's first try at coming up with alternative funding was setting up this ridiculous tolling program that they wanted to do, which 30% of the revenue that comes in on tolling would go to running the tolling program. As opposed to a gas tax or an AMT or AMT type tax where the overhead's like 1%. It's just a much more efficient way of collecting.
What's the
taxes.
mechanism they're proposing to use to determine the road user fee?
That's part of the conversation going on. Is it road, like one of the things they've talked about is miles driven with some type of offset for the type of vehicle you're driving. If you're driving a heavy truck, obviously, and
So
so
how do they collect how many miles you've driven?
that's part of what they're.
Well, that's important.
It is.
Because I don't want a GPS tracker in my vehicle.
No, they're talking more about.
Every time you license it or register it or whatever.
Update it, or it might be, like, my proposal was, it should just be under taxes, and you report your mileage and it's all gets paid. for
Whenever you go to the
taxes.
DEQ, they check your mileage and.
Yeah.
So you don't go to the.
Not
DEQ for electronics.
not everyone has.
Yeah, not everyone has DEQ, so.
But to register, you do have to say your odometer stuff, and so, although
That
maybe.
seems to be the most logical thing to be, do
Yeah.
it when you're doing your renewal registration.
I haven't heard anyone suggest a GPS.
Oh, their original proposal from.
I know,
Oh, it's
but
been
I'm not hearing
mentioned
it
in the
now.
Region One Act,
Yeah, I
but
just
that's a
don't think,
discussion.
I
not
just
as
don't
a-
think it's gonna fly.
Yeah, that people are not gonna track.
But we need to get to a more sustainable model because,
Yeah,
sorry to not. They can't even pay for the road maintenance, so anyways,
Is that you have one more?
I got one more. The other one is, I wish I could combine these two. I'm gonna go toward the marijuana tax because the state stole our revenue from us last cycle. It'd be nice to get that back.
what's the alcohol tax one? Is that proposing raising it?
It's proposing allowing cities to raise it.
My five are infrastructure funding, employment lands readiness, lodging tax flexibility. And although this one might not impact Sherwood as much, it will impact a bunch of the coastal cities who have all their tourism that come in and they can't use their lodging tax for their roads and things like that. So the transportation package and the shift from gas tax to road user fee.
One of yours was lodging tax flexibility.
It's me.
Yep.
Employment lands readiness. Shift from gas to road user fee, assuming it's not GPS tracking. I like the lodging tax flexibility. And that three is did I say the transportation package? Or does that include roads or is it just buses?
Oh, no, that's all about.
Okay, then I'm for that one, but when I know, what is place-based planning?
I can figure that out. There's something about water and
I was on like little.
Good. Any one more?
they didn't do a good job of describing, making a case for it.
Infrastructure fund.
I had infrastructure funding, inter-community transit. I think is that what it was called? I did shorthand.
Oh, funding and expanding public and intercommunity transit. That's what you're talking about, lower left-hand corner.
I'll
Second,
look at intercommunity transit, yeah, lower left corner.
Yeah,
That one.
that one.
Okay.
The transportation in 2025 package. I was fluctuating between the lodging tax and the marijuana tax, so I don't hear either one of those. And then I'm gonna be outlier on this one because I didn't realize we don't have a huge problem with houselessness, but it's coming. I mean, Sherwood's been to face it. I'd rather be prepared. So I have shelter and homeless response.
That's one of my sub ones, 'cause we always say we don't have a statewide plan, we're working in silos.
So you want
I don't care. I really,
I have a point in each of them,
There
and
you go.
then we'll see how it shakes out.
my guess is just reading what's being said in OC that full funding alignment with housing production is gonna be part of their priorities.
the what?
The one the full funding and alignment for housing.
Oh,
production.
no, mine's shelter and homeless response.
Oh, shelter and homes, yeah, I think that,
I mean, they kind of go together, but
I'm pretty positive that will work.
Regardless, yeah. All right,
Shelter and homelessness response. Address energy affordability challenges and rising utility costs. Expanding public transportation and intercommunity transit. Investment in community resiliency and climate planning resources. And the 2025 transportation package.
I'm gonna change one of mine.
the other one was his investment, the third one down in the far.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Don't sway his.
Synergy.
Investment in community resiliency and climate planning resources, is that one you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the third one down on the far right.
Fourth one down. There we go.
Third one down.
Well, I thought you said address energy affordability.
I did for that one as well.
That was
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so my first one was infrastructure funding. I still have a confusion on the AI cybersecurity one, but I don't think they're gonna solve that one, so I didn't put that one down, but the second one is the the funding and expanding public and inter-community transit. Third was transportation package. I think those kind of go hand in hand. And then employment, land, readiness and availability. And the full funding for housing. Actually, sorry, I did bump full funding for housing up to number 2. So could make a little arrow. And I'm with you. I didn't, it seems like if I were in charge of putting this slide together, I would have combined some of them just to.
Well, yeah, and part of it is they came out of all these different committees.
I know.
The committees vote on it.
That's how it reads.
On the AI stuff, there's 2 statewide working groups that are working on this. It's more along the lines of, let's figure out what we need to do in the future at this point. And the ITC committee gets involved in those, and we have members on that, and we're having meetings about it. So that one's gonna be interesting.
Did we have 5 that rise to the top?
Well, can I change one vote?
Yeah, we,
Take marijuana tax off and put full funding and alignment for housing production on there.
And then would you mind reading Keith's?
hold on, what was that?
Full funding and alignment for housing production.
Oh, yeah.
And what you want removed?
Marijuana tax.
Marijuana tax, because I figure we only got one place anyway, even if we got a ton of money on that.
That's why I didn't do
I'm still bitter that they unilaterally took it from us.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
hospitality.
Keith had employment, land readiness and availability, infrastructure funding, 2025 transportation package. And then infrastructure funding again, co-sponsored by community and economic development. That was his 3.
He made his own, okay.
So we have infrastructure funding. There's one that stands out. Employment, land readiness stands out, and transportation package stands out.
I would also move my vote from lodging tax flexibility to full funding and alignment for housing production. I think that might know that one.
I can do that as well.
I'd be in favor of that.
Okay, so then that one stands out.
That's 4.
Do we have a couple that are close?
We have lodging tax got 3 votes, shift from gas tax to road user fee has 3,
That's a big.
and funding and expanding public inter.
So my thoughts on that is that we got more roads than we have hotels. And while that might be a big thing for places with more hotels, it's Sherwood.
Yeah.
We've only got the one hotel.
What about between the shift from gas tax and road use and the funding and expanding public and inter-community transit? Because those 2 are tied too as well.
Yeah.
What do you guys think on those 2?
I'd go with the.
Either of the public transit, we always talk about that, how we don't have anything here.
Yeah,
I'm inclined to go that way too, because I think the gas tax road use thing is gonna happen anyway.
yeah, and I think that if we can figure out, we've talked about how instead of having the hub and spokes, we need to have a lot of little wheels, and maybe that will help push that thought further, so I'd go for that one.
I mean, I probably agree that the gas tax to road use being on the Region 1 Act, they talk about all the time, it's probably gonna get
Yeah.
pushed regardless, but
It's probably gonna be a big part of the conversation with the 2025 transportation.
Yeah.
plan anyways.
it is. So I'd be fine with the other one, funding and expanding public.
Funding expanding, is everybody good with that one?
Yep.
There's your 5. I'll submit them in the morning. Great.
Excellent.
We didn't have to go through 21 slides.
Yeah.
But I put them there in case we need to back up to.
You did a good job putting that together.
Yeah, thank you. Our work session is over, and we'll go ahead and jump into executive session. We'll go ahead and make sure that's